My parents spoiled my brother's kids while ignoring mine. Now that my children are more successful, they suddenly want to reconnect. Too late, my kids cut them off for good. Hello, Reddit I Plus here. My story doesn't begin with my children, or even with me as a father. It begins decades earlier, in a cramped two-bedroom house in northern Ohio, where favoritism was woven into the walls. I was born second. Leonard, my brother, came first, 3 years older. From the moment he could walk, my parents decided he was the golden child. He was praised for his drawings, even when he scribbled nonsense. I remember once, when I was 9, winning a science fair at school. I came home clutching my ribbon, my chest swelling with pride. My father barely looked at it before turning to Leonard and asking about his little league game. "Martin, that's nice," my mom said distractedly. "Leonard, did you hit the ball today?" That was the rhythm. My milestones disappeared in Leonard's shadow. When Leonard wrecked his first car at 17, my parents bought him another within the month. When I scraped together money from a part-time job to buy a used rust bucket at 18, they scolded me for wasting money on junk. By the time I was 21, I realized nothing I did would ever change the narrative. To them, I was good enough, but never remarkable. Leonard, though, he could have set the house on fire and they'd call him passionate. At 25, I had enough. I moved out, across the country to Oregon, and built a life with Helena. She was steady, kind, and she never made me feel like second best. With her, I felt seen. We had Julia when I was 26, Ryan 2 years later, and Sophie after a 5-year gap. Becoming a father terrified me at first. I was scared I would repeat my parents' mistakes, but something clicked inside me. I refused to let any of my children feel invisible. I celebrated every win, big or small. Julia's first spelling bee ribbon got a place on the fridge. Ryan's messy Lego towers were treated like architectural marvels. Sophie's early piano plunking brought tears to my eyes. Meanwhile, my parents poured every ounce of money and attention into Leonard's family. Private schools, brand new cars at 16, elaborate birthday parties. I got the occasional phone call, "How are the kids?" But it always circled back to Leonard's children. I didn't resent my brother's kids. They didn't choose to be favorites, but I resented my parents deeply. And my children noticed. When Julia turned 12, she asked, "Dad, why don't Grandma and Grandpa ever come visit us? They always post pictures with Dylan and Fiona online." I tried to explain gently. "Sometimes people have favorites, sweetheart. It doesn't mean you aren't special." But Julia was sharp. "It feels like they don't even know us." And she was right. They didn't. My parents never learned Julia's favorite subject, Ryan's passion for drawing buildings, or Sophie's growing obsession with Chopin. They knew nothing, because they had never asked. Over time, my kids stopped expecting anything from them. They poured their energy into school, sports, and hobbies, and they excelled. Not for applause, but for themselves. Julia earned a scholarship to study computer science. Ryan won regional awards for his architectural designs. Sophie was accepted into a prestigious music conservatory program for high school students. They built themselves from grit, not handouts. 7 years slipped by with only surface-level contact. Then one evening, as I was clearing dinner dishes, my phone rang. The screen lit up with Mom. I hesitated. Something in me already knew this wasn't just a casual chat. I answered, "Martin." "Oh, sweetheart, it's been too long." My mother gushed, her tone too cheerful. "We've been thinking about you and the kids so much. How are Julia, Ryan, and Sophie?" I stiffened. This sudden interest didn't ring true. "They're fine," I said carefully. "Well, your father and I think it's time we reconnect. It's been far too long and we'd love to come visit. Maybe even plan a family trip together. Wouldn't that be wonderful?" Her voice was syrupy sweet, but my gut told me there was something beneath it. And then, like clockwork, she revealed the real motive. "You know, Leonard's kids have been struggling. Dylan can't keep a steady job, Fiona dropped out of college, and the younger two aren't doing much better. Meanwhile, we've heard such wonderful things about your kids. Julia's internship, Ryan's competition win, Sophie's music program. We're just so proud there it was." For the first time in my life, my parents were acknowledging my kids' achievements, not because they cared, but because my kids were outshining Leonard's. They didn't want to reconnect out of love. They wanted association with success. I took a breath and said, "You don't get to ignore them for 20 years, and then come back just because they're doing well now. You missed birthdays, graduations, recitals. You don't know who they are." My mother was silent for a beat, then said defensively, "Parents make mistakes, Martin, but family is family. Don't you think it's time to forgive?" Forgiveness? That word burned. Forgiveness isn't owed when the wound is still open. I told her, "If you want forgiveness, you'll have to ask my kids." But But I don't think they're interested, I hung up, trembling. That night, I sat my kids down and told them everything. The favoritism, the trust funds, the years of dismissal. Julia's jaw tightened. They want us now because we're worth bragging about. Ryan shook his head. We don't need them. We never did, Sophie whispered. They never felt like grandparents anyway, and that was that. But my parents weren't done. 2 months later, without warning, they showed up. Helena spotted them through the window one Saturday morning. My father in his pressed slacks, my mother holding a gift bag, both standing on our porch like strangers. I felt my blood run cold. When I opened the door, my mother's eyes lit up. Martin! We thought we'd surprise you. We brought gifts for the children. Before I could respond, Julia appeared behind me. She froze, then crossed her arms. Oh, now you remember we exist? She said sharply. Ryan came next, standing tall. You don't get to just show up after all these years. Sophie, usually quiet, added, We're not charity cases. We don't need your presence. My parents looked stunned, as though they hadn't anticipated resistance. My father tried to recover. Now, listen, family should stick together. We made some mistakes, but it's time to move forward. Julia's voice cut like glass. You made choices, not mistakes. You chose Leonard's family over us. You can't rewrite history. My mother's face crumpled. She tried to hand Sophie the gift bag, but Sophie stepped back. Finally, I spoke. You had 20 years to be grandparents. That door is closed. Please leave. They stood there, stricken, before retreating silently to their car. My kids didn't cheer or celebrate. They were somber, but resolute. Boundaries hurt, even when they're necessary. Later that night, Julia said, I thought it would feel good to tell them off, but really it just feels sad. I nodded. That's because we wish things had been different, but we can't change the past. Ryan put his arm around Sophie. At least we have each other. That's more than enough. And he was right. For the first time in my life, I felt completely free of my parents' shadow. They had chosen their golden child long ago. My children had now chosen themselves. And in that choice, they had given me the closure I never thought I'd find. After my parents drove away that day, the silence in our home was heavy. You'd think shutting the door on them would feel triumphant, but it didn't. It felt like watching a storm pass, only to realize the wreckage it left behind. That night, I couldn't sleep. Memories kept circling me. Childhood moments I thought I had buried, like the Christmas when I was 10. Leonard got a shiny new bicycle, painted red with chrome handlebars. I got a stack of books. My father patted my shoulder and said, You're the quiet type. Reading suits you better. Or the time I brought home my report card in high school. Straight A's. My father glanced at it for 3 seconds before turning to Leonard, who'd just announced he made the basketball team despite failing half his classes. Now that's real achievement, Dad said proudly. The message was clear my whole life. No matter what I did, I would never outshine their favorite son. And now, they had tried to drag my children into that same cycle. Julia was the one who struggled most after the confrontation. At 21, she was sharp, ambitious, and independent, but also deeply sensitive beneath the armor. One evening, she came to me, her voice shaking. Dad, why didn't you tell us sooner? About everything. About how much they ignored us? I sighed, because I didn't want you to grow up bitter, Julia. I thought if I shielded you, maybe you'd have hope they'd come around. Her eyes filled with tears. But they never did, and I wasted years hoping. I'd sit at piano recitals and watch other kids run to their grandparents after. I kept wondering why mine weren't there. She clenched her fists. I don't want them in my life ever again, not even if they beg. For the first time, I saw myself reflected in her pain. The little boy in me, ignored and dismissed, had grown into her anger. Ryan processed things differently. He was quiet, thoughtful, and often buried his feelings behind humor. A few days later, I found him sketching in his room. Dad, he said without looking up, do you ever wonder if they'll regret it? Like, really regret it? I think they already do, I replied softly. He smirked. Good, they should. Because all the money they threw at Leonard's kids didn't make them successful. It just made them entitled. Meanwhile, we worked for everything, and we're better off. He set his pencil down. But you know what's funny? Even though they treated us like nothing, I still wanted their approval. Isn't that pathetic? I shook my head. It's human. We all want to be loved by our parents, but sometimes the best thing you can do is love yourself enough to walk away. Ryan nodded, but his eyes lingered with sadness. Sophie, at 16, was the gentlest of the three. She hadn't lived long enough to see the worst of it, but she had always felt the absence. One night, she came into our room and sat on the edge of the bed. Dad, she whispered, were Grandma and Grandpa ever proud of me? The question broke me. I pulled her close. Sweetheart, they should have been. They should have cheered for every note you played, but they were too blind to see. That's not your fault. She hugged me tightly. I don't need them. I just need you and Mom. And in that moment, I realized something. My kids weren't broken by the neglect. They had grown stronger, but that didn't erase the wound. What I didn't know then was that my parents were unraveling on their own. Leonard's children had all but drained them financially. Dylan, the eldest, had burned through 2 trust funds and was still living at home, jobless. Fiona had quit college twice, each time after expensive tuition bills. The younger 2, Max and Claire, had shown little drive. Meanwhile, my parents had grown old. They looked at Leonard's family, unmotivated, dependent, and realized their golden dream was crumbling. And then they looked at mine, from a distance. Julia earning internships, Ryan winning awards, Sophie performing on stage. It ate at them. My mother, especially, carried guilt. She confessed to a cousin once, "We may have chosen wrong. Martin's children, they're remarkable, but they want nothing to do with us." And for the first time, she understood what it meant to be shut out. Months passed. Just when I thought the storm had calmed, they showed up again. This time at Julia's college dorm. Julia called me, furious. "Dad!" They were waiting outside my building. They tried to give me an envelope full of money, saying it was to make up for lost time. I told them to shove it. My blood boiled. They had no right. They can't buy their way back. Julia's voice cracked. "I don't need their money. I needed grandparents." And they were never there. She hung up before I could respond, leaving me seething. I called my parents immediately. "If you ever ambush my kids again, I'll file for a restraining order. Do you understand me?" My father tried to bark back, but I didn't let him. "You lost them. You lost me. And it's your own fault." Then I hung up. For good this time. It's been over a year since then. My parents haven't tried again. Word through relatives is that Leonard's family still leans on them, draining what's left of their energy and money. As for my children, they're thriving. Julia just landed a prestigious internship with a tech company. Ryan's portfolio is being reviewed by an international design firm. Sophie performed her first solo piano recital to a standing ovation. And they did it all without grandparents cheering from the crowd. Sometimes, I wonder if my parents sit in their quiet house at night, haunted by the family they could have had if they'd chosen differently. But that's no longer my concern. The truth is simple. They chose their golden child. Now, my children have chosen themselves. And for once in my life, I'm proud to say, so have I.